this.
Okay.
It's grown.
Mic on also? Om Mangalam Gurudevaya Devye Matriksha Mangalam Mangalam Bhakta Brindevyo Sarvalokaya Mangalam Om Stapakaya Chadarmasya Sarvadharma Sarupine Avatara Varishtaya Ramakrishnaya Mangalam Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Deva Maheshwara Guru Deva Param Brahman Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Ashmaracharya Prayantam Vande Gurum Paramparam Shri Ganeshaya Sharda Devi Jai Ma. So continuing our reading from Swami Vivekananda's Bhakti Yoga, and some little books came in the mail a few days ago. We ordered a bunch. Most of them are gone, so we'll order again. They're like $4 or $5, really cute little, convenient. You realize it's a very small little book, and this little tiny booklet, a lot of very big ideas. So last week we did two sections. We did the chapter, in my version I've been reading from kind of an edited edition by Swami Nikilananda called The Yogas and Other Works. I like big books, and it feels heavy compared to the little tiny book. Reading today's class will be so I've always, it's just such a beautiful book, but it has, now I'm realizing, comparing, there's a few things, because it's edited for ease for a new presentation. We just notice some of the Sanskrit Devanagari verses are left out, and the Swamiji's quoting. I've been saying it's like, oh, Swamiji, there's a translation, but we don't know the quote. But actually, the quote they used to include the quote, so that's good. In the book, it's the same, but it has some. And the title, I just noticed the title is different. This is the chapter we read last week called Incarnations. This is called Incarnate Teachers and Incarnations, right? So it's, I think, like here, the mantra Om. Here is a mantra Om, word and wisdom. So it's like, it's just slight differences. But anyways, so the section we read was called Incarnations. And if you think of, if we kind of get a little bird's eye view of what Swamiji has done, first it was his definition, what is bhakti, and what's defined by bhakti. Who is Ishvara? Because one of the definitions of bhakti is that bhakti can only be to Ishvara. Now, we use the word, the bhakti means devotion, or loving devotion, or but it's, we can have devotion to ideals, we can have devotion towards people, we can have a devotion towards monsters, political leaders, anything, we can have devotion. That's devotion, but it's a problem. We don't have a special word for, like bhakti is a very specialized word. So by bhakti, as Narada means it, it's devotion specifically for Ishvara. So then he goes into what is Ishvara, right? And what is meant by God, like this. And then it was, what is the goal of bhakti is spiritual realization. It's one of the titles of the chapter, right? And so that's important because sometimes we show devotion, we worship God, we worship deities, we worship saints, right, and yogis, and we do service, right? Not always for the goal of spiritual realization. Sometimes it's as simple as, let me do good in my exams. Because I remember those prayers, right? Or let somebody become healthy that's sick, right? Or let me find a job, or let my husband find a job, or like this, or may our marriage become smooth and problems in the marriage. These are natural, of course, these are natural things. But they're not in the same category. It's not by what's meant by bhakti. Bhakti, the goal of bhakti is spiritual realization. And then spiritual realization is also defined, is liberation, supreme enlightenment, nirvana, like this, the highest conception. Bhakti over here. And then the need. Then we skipped 2 chapters: the need of the guru and the qualifications of guru and disciple. Those we read on Guru Purnima, right? We just that's what made me inspired by this text to continue it, right? Because now it's the goal of bhakti is for Ishvara, but how do we know who is Ishvara? Ishvara is God. Ishvara, by definition, Ishvara is a definition of something that's beyond definition. We can't conceive. Right, an infinite, even the word infinite is a finite human conception. So how do we know that? So then you have to, and bhakti is all about, what do we do? We have gurus, we have saints, we have mantras, we worship avatars, we worship deities, we do puja, we go on pilgrimage, we have murtis and pictures, we sweep temples, we cook food and make food offerings, So how does that connect with Ishvara, the great beyond, the inconceivable absolute being? Right. So first he starts with guru. What is guru? Right. And then the chapter on incarnations we read is the incarnate teacher. If the guru is important, now the guru is also what to speak of these like world gurus, the incarnation. Then he says that actually we can only if we're going to worship anything, we have to worship the avatar, the incarnation. Right. And he gave. Because we're humans, we think of the highest thing we can think of is the greatest possible idea that the human mind can conceive, right? Beyond that, we can't conceive. So he says that we have to worship. So that's, and then we rush through. I'm a little bit, I don't want to take time to go, but actually as we've gone through so many talks on mantra, so we kind of rush through his description of Om. But Om, how Om is the symbol, the best possible symbol of the absolute Akhanda, the unmanifest or the infinite source of being that manifests everything, right? He shows that in a very simple way. And just like that one being, within that one being, there's many revelations of that being. And so just like Om is a perfect name for the perfect word or the name or the sound of the infinite being, beyond name, beyond form, there's also, when that same being is conceived as with name and with form, as specified, right, as distinct, as individual, as multifarious. That's not the right word. No, that's a bad thing, right? No, multifarious. Many. As many, as variety, variegated. How's that? Right. Then he doesn't go much into it. It's assumed that you accept the point. Is that those names reveal those individual forms of the deity. It's like Om best represents and encapsulates and reveals and touches the infinite beyond name and form. When that infinite is conceived of as name through name and form, as deities, as avatars, as qualities, then there's mantras that encapsulate, reveal, touch those. So that's where like that. But that's a jump. But this is the meditation on mantra goes immediately into the chapter we'll do with today, worship of substitutes and images, because we have. If you think about it, the philosophy behind mantra is pretty abstract, right? To go into Sonic theology, right? How God's name is, or a divine sound is both points. You have to go into linguistics, how it points to a referent, right? It's a sign that points to something. Yet a divine sound is also the thing that it points to. It's pretty. And most people we do prayers. Right, but most in people in religions, they pray, they worship, but the meditative use of a mantra is not universal. It's universal. It's found in every culture and every religion, right? But it's meant for mystics, for yogis, the equivalents of yogis that are doing this very precise form of meditation using a divinely revealed sound that shares the qualities of the infinite, as well as being something we can conceive. It shares the quality of the inconceivable while being conceived. So that's something very rarefied and specified for a meditator, right? But we step down a little bit. That's not everyone's worshiping God or gods or saints or holy places, right? Not everybody, but it really, that's the gist, the gist and grist of religion, right? So we have to understand. Now he steps this step down and explains the idea of worshiping symbols, worshiping statues, worshiping holy places like this. So we'll start there. The next I'm going to read, because this has some. I don't want to skip this. He gave the Sanskrit verses, and they're not easy. I'll see if I can pronounce a little bit. That's good. Give them a shot. The next point to be considered. This is the worship of substitutes and images. The next point to be considered are the worship of pratikas, or the things more or less satisfactory as substitutes for God, and the worship of pratimas, or images. So these are the two words he's going to use back. He's going to use many, many times throughout this little chapter. So pratikas and pratimas. So pratima, this is a word Thakur used. He worked on this, kind of like an image. I guess like an image of God would be a pratima, and a pratika is a substitute. Is a not an image, but symbol. I guess is a good way. What is the worship of God through pratika? And this he actually quotes the verse. Abramani brahmata satyaha satya nu sandhanam. Now, joining the mind with devotion to that which is not Brahman. This is abramani. Right? So you put the mind on something that's not Brahman. Right? So a symbol of God is not God. Right, so it's an interesting start, So what is the worship of a symbol of God? It's putting the mind on something that's not God. Why would we do such a thing? Right? With devotion to that which is not Brahman, taking it to be Brahman. There's another verse going through my notes, because in our classes on the Kali Sahasranama we quoted this, but I didn't remember it by heart, and then I couldn't find it. Right, but it's a famous verse, and it's from the Tantra. They may be from Mahanirvana Tantra or something like that. He says that Brahman, which is beyond concept, beyond name, beyond form, beyond thought, a thought is attributed to it, right? And therefore we can think about it. We can think about something that's beyond thought. A thought is given. Something that's beyond form, a form is assigned. Something beyond name, a name is indicates it. Right, so that's called worship. That's a definition in this tantra as puja. Puja is assigning a thought, a name, a form, an idea to something which is beyond it. Right. But again, why do that? But the thing, it's beyond. So it's in one definition, one very nice poetic name that we find in the mystics is like the unknown, right, or sometimes the unknowable, right, the infinite, inconceivable, akhanda. Infinite, inconceivable, unchanging, beyond time, beyond space. Well, we can't think of these things. Even these words don't have clear meaning if we really think about them, right? Yet, we think of it. We think of him or her, right? We do meditate. We do think about that which is unthinkable, right? So in one sense, and this is a challenge that many modern religious, by modern I mean 600-700 years, right? Religious movements, right? Will claim that since you can't give a name or a form, right, or an idea, and any idea you give to one that's infinite is a mistake, right? And so that's an argument we made. It is a mistake, right? But it's unknowable. It's unknown. It's the other Swami Bhajanananda. There's a senior Swami Bhajanananda Ramakrishna mission, and a beautiful class he gave writing on Sri. It's called Ramakrishna the Unknown. It's exquisite. It's a masterpiece, I think. One of his most poetic and emotional writing. He's a brilliant writer and thinker. But he says Sri Ramakrishna is unknown, but he's not unknowable, right? And so God is unknown, but not unknowable. Although one of his names is the unknowable. Right. So although his farthest extent cannot be known by the finite mind, right? So Sri Ramakrishna said only Brahman realizes Brahman, right? So Brahman knows Brahman. The infinite alone knows the infinite, right? So we're on this side of that divide. If we're in the finite perspective, we can know something, but what we know is unlimited. We can never. There's no end to our knowledge, to our ability to know, right? So we've talked a lot about this in the Kali Sahasranama, that when we give a name, when we say something about the infinite, actually it's true. If we say anything about anything, we've used this term that we're revealing not our knowledge but our ignorance. Sometimes we're a little nervous about commenting on something, especially somebody who's an expert, because what we say about it reveals how little we know. By revealing what we know, we reveal how little we know. Right. So when we make a statement on religion, right, or on anything, but especially about religion, we're revealing our ignorance, right? And so that's dangerous, right? And then we fight based upon our ignorance, but in spiritual life, when we name, we give a form or a name. This is from a psychological perspective, or from a more sacred perspective, when the divine reveals a name or reveals a form, appears, gives a way to think about him, her, it, them. When we name it, or when the name comes, and are we naming our ignorance? Right. That's the same thing. Are we revealing our ignorance? So what we've discussed in the past is we're we're naming the mystery. That's, I think, how we described it before, right? We're giving a name to that which is mysterious, which is unknown, right? Which we can never fully grasp. Yet it's allowing us to grasp it, right? To grasp the ungraspable, to think the unthinkable, to love the like this. So this has been an interpretive theme through our Bhagavatam classes, our Sahasranama classes. Right, this is one of the main things in Bhagavatam classes. It's through devotion that we can grasp the unknowable, right? Know the unknowable, like Mother Yashoda tying Krishna. He's infinite. How can she tie him? Right? If she tried, she'd always come a few fingers too short, and all the rope in the world couldn't tie him because he's infinite. And rope, even a lot of rope, is really finite. Right? All the rope in the universe is really finite. Right? Yet he allowed himself to be caught out of devotion, out of her love, his love for her and her love for him. He allowed himself to be caught, right? This is one of the sitting here. We gave a class. I remember that class was given here, not outside in the cold, right? But it's important. Sorry, we got a little critter. Anyways, I'm digressing. What does he say? Worship of the mind as Brahman. Joining the mind with devotion to that which is not Brahman, taking it to be Brahman, says Bhagavan Ramanuja. This is Ramanujacharya's definition, right? Of worship of the pratika, of a symbol, that which isn't Brahman. So what does it mean by saying it's not Brahman? Because in Vedanta we thought everything is Brahman, and even saying everything is Brahman, that's okay. Actually, there's only Brahman, not everything. There's no things. There's only Brahman, right? And Brahman's not a thing, right? So take a step back. Everything is Brahman, or Brahman has become everything. You can, according to different schools of thought, how do we interpret it? Yeah. So how to say that the image, like a Shiva lingam, isn't Brahman, right? Or image of Kali isn't Brahman, or Jesus isn't Brahman, or our Guru isn't Brahman, right? Because what are the qualities of Brahman? Infinite, eternal, unchanging, beyond conception. Yet the Shiva lingam, the Kali image, the incarnate Jesus Christ, right? Our living Guru, our dead Guru, has a beginning, has an end, it's not infinite, it's not eternal, it's within time, it's conceivable, all those things, right? So the mistake is, and this is one of the arguments that Swamiji is going to make in this chapter, that if we take something that's by all its qualities not Brahman, and we think, oh, that's Brahman, right? Is that a mistake or is that a good thing, right? It can be both, right? The worship pratima, if you think, maybe I'm jumping ahead, let Swamiji make the argument. Maybe I'll stop and let Swamiji make the argument. I can get all fired up to make the argument for him. And see, Swamiji agrees with me, but it's not the way it worked. Shankara says, so that's Ramanuja's definition. Shankaracharya says, worship of the mind as Brahman, this is worship with regard to the internal, and of the Akasha as Brahman, this is regard to the gods. The mind is the internal pratika, Akasha is the external one, and both have to be worshipped as substitutes for God. So this is a strange definition, but actually we can imagine something in the mind, right? And make the mind itself consciousness, awareness itself, the focus, or something like that. And that's the internal. We take a mental image or the mind itself within the mind as a focus of God, as a something to meditate upon. Very yogic way of thinking, right? To make the mind or internal, the heart or the mind or consciousness or the ego or the sense of self, something like that as a focus of meditation. That is Brahman. Or to make Akash means space, right? So either you think, oh, infinite. That's really big space ultimately, right? Like the sky, infinite like the sky, as if the sky is infinite, or infinite like the ocean, as if the ocean is infinite, right? So, or seeing nature itself as, and the gods of nature that control nature as God, as Brahman. That is internal, external patimi. We can take an internal symbol in the mind or external symbol in space itself. And then he quotes from a line: "The sun is Brahman. This is the command." This is another verse from the Gita. I'm from the Vedas. He who worships name as Brahman in such passages, a doubt arises as to the worship of pratika, says Shankara. The word pratika meaning going towards, and worshipping a pratika means worshipping as a substitute something which is, in one or more respects, like Brahman, but is not Brahman. Along with the pratika mentioned in the Shruti, there are various others to be found in the Puranas and the Tantras. In this kind of pratika worship may be included. In this type of pratika worship may be included all the various forms of Priti worship and Deva worship. Pitri worship means ancestor worship, and Deva worship the god. So this is the most common in lived Hinduism. People worship the ancestors and they worship the Devas, right? And so it's Shankara saying and that it's something that's like Brahman, but not Brahman. Right, so it has some of the qualities, therefore it inspires. Like if you want to think, like the classic example that we think a lot is the example of the wave, is a perfect symbol of the ocean. Right, it's not the ocean. It's by definition almost opposite. In the realm of water, a wave is really small and the ocean is really big. So there are two extremes of the definition. But it's a perfect image of the because it has a lot of qualities of the ocean. For instance, wet, full of water. Right, the ocean is full of water and the wave is full of water. Right, so it's a very good symbol for the ocean. So when we see symbols or images or yantras or of God, they represent or have qualities that we attribute to God, right, or to the infinite, or to Ishvara, or to Brahman, right? But they're not in full, right? And like or sometimes we think like. Ganesha, who's Ganesha? Ganesha is the aspect of Brahman that removes obstacles, right? So removing obstacles may be attributed as one of God's qualities, right? But so it's one quality. It's not all the qualities, right? But you see, Shankaracharya has a hymn to Ganesha as the infinite Brahman, not as the remover of obstacles, right? So he can be. So he's anyway. We'll jump into the next point. Now, worshipping Ishvara and him alone is bhakti, right? So actually only worshipping the infinite God, the source of everything, the control of everything, that is bhakti. So what about Deva and Pitri, ancestor and gods, right? It cannot be bhakti. So this is a very, it seems a little bit harsh statement that, those who are worshipping the gods, that's not bhakti, right? Right. If they're worshipping the gods as gods, right, and not as God, there's a difference. This is the point. I'm making Swamiji's point again. The various kinds of worship of the various devas are all included in ritualistic karma, which gives to the worshipper only a particular result in the form of some celestial enjoyment, but can never give rise to bhakti nor lead to mukti. So actually, ritualistic karma, that means karma kanda, right? And most of the Vedas are karma kanda. Karma kanda is the world of rituals, where it's actually, in a certain sense, you can almost consider it like the ancient world's version of scientific materialism, right? You do something, you get a result. It's a cause and effect relationship, very clear. You do this ritual, worshipping such and such a deva or such and such ancestor, and there's a result expected, either in this world or in the other world, right? You worship the devas and you go to heaven. You worship the ancestors and the devas, your ancestors go to heaven or go to Pitraloka, or we don't fall to hell. So this is, and that's for the vast majority of the Vedic literature is that. It's karmakanda, right? The rituals, the Agnihotras, all these things are meant for that. And of course, the different religions are not the same. They've developed differently, but if you look at it in a particular way, most religion is in that category. You do this puja, either you do this ritual and clear yourself of the sin, or you have a certain declaration of belief, and therefore clear, and therefore you attain a heavenly reward, right? According to what you do. Of course, this is not the way everybody sees, but this is one way to interpret the different religious motivations, right? But this cannot be, that's in the realm of karma, and therefore not bhakti, and doesn't lead to mukti. One thing, therefore, has to be carefully borne in mind. The various kinds of worship of the various devas are all included in the ritualistic karma, and gives the worshipper only a particular result in the form of some celestial enjoyment, but can never give rise to bhakti nor lead to mukti. One thing, therefore, has to be carefully borne in mind. If, as it happens in some cases, the highly philosophical ideal, the supreme Brahman, is dragged down by pratika worship to the level of the praktika, and the praktika itself is taken as the atman of the worshipper, his antaryamin, his inner being, then the worshipper becomes easily misled. For no praktika can really be the atman of the worshipper. But where Brahman himself is the object of worship, and the praktika stands only as a substitute or a suggestion thereof, that is to say, where through the praktika the omnipresent Brahman is worshipped, the praktika itself being idealized into the cause of all, or Brahman, the worship is positively beneficial. Nay, it is absolutely necessary for all of mankind until they have gone beyond the primary or preparatory state of mind with regards to worship. Very big, dense statement, right? So the idea of the philosophical way of God being dragged down into practical worship, symbol worship. So it seems almost the same thing. These two things one is deluding and one is liberating, one is beneficial, but they're almost the same thing. But there is a very subtle difference. This is a philosophical discussion. This is not a practical discussion, right? It's a very careful philosophical discussion, so you have to understand it. I think in the Hinduism paper that Swamiji presented, I believe, I may be mistaken, but that Swamiji presented at the Parliament of Religions, he says that, using an antiquated term, even in the most primitive tribal, right? We wouldn't use that language now. The primitive tribal, simple villager, uneducated villager, never read the Vedas, never studied the six systems of philosophy, right? Worshipping some stone under a tree, right? He says, I don't hear them say, "Oh, my dear stone under the tree, please bless my family with good health," right? Instead they say, "Oh, infinite Lord of compassion, right? The creator of everything, please bless my family," right? So there's a difference. When you attribute the infinite to a finite thing, there's some danger. You'd say it doesn't say, maybe not danger, but it doesn't seem very mentally clear. But when you know you worship, or when you're worshiping that, because the symbol becomes a vehicle for you to think of that which is beyond, for you to contact which is beyond, right? Then it's very logical. It makes good sense, right? Not only is worship positively beneficial, it is absolutely necessary for all mankind until they have got beyond the primary and preparatory state of mind, which regard to worship. When therefore any gods or other beings are worshipped in and for themselves, such worship is only ritualistic karma. And as a vidya, a science, it gives us only the fruits belonging to that particular vidya. But when the devas or any other being are looked upon as Brahman and worshipped, the result obtained is the same as that obtained by the worshipping of Ishvara. Right? If you worship, so and there's some very beautiful literature like Guru Gita and the literature of Guru Bhakti. Guru is a good symbol of this, or a good example of this. Right? Right? We're told not to focus on the human characteristics of the Guru. Of course, couldn't be. Sometimes that advice is just used to abusive relation between the very unbalanced and unquestioning disbalance of power, and easily abused. Right? That's why you should know before you accept a Guru. You should know the quality of the Guru, quality of the disciple, what are the standards, so, but once the relationship is established authentically, then it says that we shouldn't see the human characteristics, right? And then Swami Shivananda, Rishikesh, he says you should superimpose all the qualities of the Brahman on the imperfect human personality of the Guru, right? So that's an interesting statement. He says, now the human personality of the Guru is secondary, right? That's not your concern. That may be the state of California's concern. The tax code. There's other things. Right? But for the disciple, at a certain point, it's not. Now it's Brahman, Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara, Guru Deva Param Brahman. To me, the Guru is Brahman itself, the Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, and Brahman itself. Verily, the supreme Brahman itself. Right. So that's the word. But. So actually, in that mantra, Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara, Guru Deva Param Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. So I can see, my Guru, to me, he's a symbol, a revelation, or for all practical purposes, he's Brahman, right? Or she's Brahman, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, right? Or I can say, actually, I have good news for all of you, right? You've heard it today, the good news. It's the new gospel, the new gospel truth. In Allahabad now, living now, there is a Swami Omanand Saraswati, who is Brahma, who created the universe, who sustains the universe and will destroy the end of time, right? It's like, he's Brahman, right? It's like that. So there's a difference, but almost no difference. The words are almost the same, right? But one is fanatical and taking a human to be the infinite. The other is seeing the infinite in the human, right? They're almost the same thing, but they're really different. Right, because one of them is, like I said, a good news. It's like, and what if you don't? But of course, disciples of other gurus may not see Swami Omananda as the one who created the universe and sustains the universe and destroys the universe at the end of time, right? So obviously they're fools and rascals. They're ignorant. They're maybe, when God has come and they don't accept Him, and they claim to be devotees of God, they don't know who God is. They have no religion. They have no intelligence, right? It's very clear. Or you can build a whole whole theological systems have been built. These are called the modern present day world religions can be seen as building you take something and because we know God only through a finite, we can only know our thought of the infinite in the beginning can only be through a finite representative of the infinite. Right, but if you take it wrong, it can easily become fanatical, right? And almost cannot not become fanatical. That's the problem, right? But this slight shift is a huge shift, right? Like Sri Ramakrishna would say again and again, Satchitananda is the only guru, right? That was his way of taking the whole thing. Like no, your guru, it's fine. Satchitananda is a guru. Not even your guru represents. No, God is a guru. Right, not even my guru is God or my guru represents God. God is a guru. Right? The real guru is Satchitananda, not the human being. It's like because it's too dangerous. As soon as you start then you cannot. How do you avoid guru cult? Right, even with the more refined approach, it can easily become a guru cult. Right, because then become unquestioned. No, God is the only guru. Right, so saying guru is God and God is guru. Right, they're saying the same thing but very differently. Right, so saying the symbol is that God has become that symbol, or God is represented by that symbol, God is revealed by that symbol, or that symbol is God. right? And what do we know about God? God's absolute. So that symbol is absolute. There's nothing beyond it. You can see you start building, you set a seemingly correct statement and build a logical system, a theological system around it, right? It gets weird very quickly. And you can see in modern day, people look at religion and it just looks weird, right? It's not, we've just discussed it, it's almost can't survive a modern critique, right? And that's a very, maybe that's good, that religion will, or that's a very sad thing, that because that's our traditional connection to the sacred and to the infinite, right? We lose that, we lose a lot, right? But at the face value, it seems to an impartial thinker, right? We've mentioned that we've been invited to a devotee's home. It says my son has become an atheist. Tell him, right? Talk to him, right? So I'm sitting there, eating enchiladas with a family and face to face with a boy who, very nice boy, right? And it's like, he's pretty much right. His arguments are right. All the things that he's saying, I also agree. And the things that the God that he's defeating, it's like that. I mean, that he doesn't believe in. I don't believe in that God either. It's really hard, So, so it's a sad thing, but maybe this challenge, whether this type of the absurdity when you start saying, "Oh, this person's now God. He's the only God," or this idea is only. It doesn't stand on its own. It doesn't serve. It doesn't survive a external critique, right? Very circular. This explains how, in many cases, both in the Shrutis and the Smritis, the Vedas and the Puranas and other scriptures, a god or a sage or some other extraordinary being is taken up and lifted, as it were, out of his own nature and idealized into Brahman, and is then worshipped. Right? That's a common thing. We take some extraordinary being, and you can see even kings have been made into gods, or maybe they are God. I mean, they're talking a little bit philosophically, so I'm not challenging that that king isn't God. I believe Ram is God, right? But Ram's in a long list of a thousand kings in his lineage, right? And many of them have incredible stories, right? And if people would have claimed this is an incarnation of God, maybe those people would become saints, right? Thinking and worshiping that Ram, right? So I'm not challenging whether Ram actually was God. But you can see an extraordinary king has been idealized and who he says, and idealized into Brahman, right? Or another, to use Swami Shivananda's statement, all the quality of Brahman superimposed on him, right? Says the Advaitist, right? The non-dualist, is not everything Brahman when the name and form have been removed from it? This is a famous definition, right? Everything, actually even in the Devi Gita, this line is there, right? Everything you remove, what is this book? It has a name and has a form, right? And it's Brahman with name and form, right? I'm Brahman with name and form. Everything exists. There's only this universal existence. We add, superimpose. Either we do it, or it reveals it, or it's intrinsic in it. That's 3 or 4 different schools of thought in half a sentence, right? Whatever the case, right? There's Brahman and there's name and form. If you remove name and form, there's only Brahman, right? So Advaitists would say, oh, no problem. If you worship a saint as Brahman, you worship an image as Brahman, you worship a deity as Brahman, because everything is Brahman if you take the name and form away, right? If we remember Sri Ramakrishna's revelation of his avatarhood to Swami Vivekananda, who was having struggle. How can he be Brahman? He's human. He's limited. All these. He's sitting there dying of cancer. How can he be Brahman? How can he be Vishnu or incarnation of God? Right? But then he thought, if he in his own words, so the story goes, if he in his own words says it even now, then I'll believe it. Right? And so we understand Sri Ramakrishna that he was Rama, he was Krishna, is now in this form as Ramakrishna. But then he says, not according to your Vedanta. Not in the way not because in Vedanta everything is Brahman, right? I'm also an incarnation of Brahman. Take my name and form away, it's Brahman. You're also an incarnation of Brahman. Take your name and form away, and you're Brahman, right? Right. So that's not what this is not that. It's a different type of avatar. Not just we take an extraordinary being and superimpose the qualities of Brahman. So the Advaitin says everything without name and form, beyond remove name and form, everything is Brahman. So there's no fault in taking something and thinking that it's a symbol of Brahman, a pratika. The Vishtadvaitist, the qualified non-dualist, right, says the fruition of even, is not he the Lord, the innermost self of everyone? That's another thing. It's like, let's not talk everything as Brahman and minus name and form, right? Still, God's within everyone's heart as Paramatman, right? And therefore, if we worship, if I'm worshiping the Guru, if I'm worshiping a saint, I'm worshiping, still, He's the source of everything. He exists there. So I'm worshiping God. And sometimes we think we have this term that Swami Vivekananda used, this term that Ayana Seva, for the worship of the poor, right? So he says, or Mother Teresa had this term, I'm worshiping Jesus in the distressing disguise of the poor, right? Really, within everybody, God is there, right? And therefore, when I'm serving somebody, I'm not serving them, I'm serving God, right? So that's another idea. Or when I'm worshiping the Guru, I'm worshiping God. I'm within everything is God. So this is a qualified. It's not pure non-dualism, and it's not pure dualism. It's seeing God is connected to everything, is within everything, the source of everything, never disconnected, right? And therefore, anything we worship is also God. So that's another justification for this. The fruition of even the worship of the Adityas and so forth, Brahman himself bestows because he is the ruler of all. Right? This is the quote from the Vedic literature, and Krishna says that also. Like whenever who you worship, it's I'm giving the fruit of that worship, right? You worship the ancestors, you worship the devas, you worship ghosts, right? You worship the Bhutas, right? Still, I'm the one giving, and actually that worship goes to me because I'm the source of everything. I'm doing everything, right? So that's a very big statement. Krishna says, speaking as Brahman, right? In Sri Bhagavanavacha, it didn't say Sri Krishna Vacha, Sri Bhagavanavacha in his the big I, right? Right? It says, anybody who worships, they worship me. And the result that they get from that worship, I give them. Right? So that's this is a Gita justification for the worship of deities, ancestors, right? But then Krishna says, but they do it in the wrong way. Right? Still, it's not because they're getting what benefit do they get? Right? If you worship the sun and you worship the elemental spirits, and you worship the ancestors, right? You get the results of that worship, right? And Krishna says, I'm giving those results of that worship. Really, you're worshiping me, but you don't know it. I'm giving the results and you don't know it, right? But you get the result. You do something and you get the result of that thing, right? That's not mukti, right? That's not bhakti, and that's not mukti. That doesn't lead to mukti. That's the karma kanda. You worship and you get the result. Although it's the one giving the result, right? It's interesting. This is a very interesting point to I'm going to run out of time. I foolishly thought I'd do 2 sections today, but it's not going to work.
Can it be called as kama bhakti, or is it wrong to say this? Are you expecting something?
Yeah, that's another Swamiji in a further chapter. To me, we were talking earlier today with our coffee, a very beautiful chapter where he talks about the triangle of love, right? And like real love, the highest bhakti has no. Actually, by Narada's definition and Swamiji's definition, sakama bhakti, devotion with a selfish end. We use the word devotion, right? But it's not really bhakti. Right, of course, and it doesn't lead to pada bhakti in the higher state of devotion. It requires, it's not given the term. You find something? Sorry. But he'll go into. But this is not quite that. This is about who you're worshiping, right? If we're worshiping extraordinary beings, right, as if they're a Brahman, raising them to as Brahman, right? So he's giving, like the Advaitin says, no problem because everything's Brahman. Right, the Vishishtadvaitin says no problem because within everybody there's Ishvara, Bhagavan, Paramatma exists within everything, right? Others say that no, it's Brahman who's giving the results of everything. He makes that worship possible, and he's bringing the results of that thing. So Says Shankaracharya in his Brahma Sutra, in his commentary on the Brahma Sutra, here in this way, Brahman becomes the object of worship because he, as Brahman, is superimposed on the pratika, just as Vishnu and so forth is superimposed upon images. So this is it, that he's using he's being very careful describing, not trying to be offensive or argue with or challenge other views of this, but Shankaracharya is giving a very psychological definition, philosophical and psychological definition, right? That the qualities of Brahman, the infinite quality of Brahman, is being superimposed, just like we said, superimposed on the imperfect human personality of the Guru, right? We do that to an image of, just like Vishnu. We have a beautiful installed murtis. Pranapatisthana has been done to our Radha and Krishna or to our Kali image, right? So Krishna, Krishna tu Bhagavan, he's the infinite supreme Lord himself, the source of all avatars, right? So did that mean that the source of avatars came from here, right? The one who's the source of all avatars, the source of all of countless trillions of universes, right? We're worshiping that one here, but it doesn't mean it happened from here. That's the important point, right? In this way, Brahman becomes the object of worship. We actually are worshipping Brahman. We are worshipping Ishvara, right? Through taking all the qualities and putting them as if or actually on. So that's the thing, is as if or actually. That's like I was looking for, right before puja, right before the lecture, I was looking for a little book by Diane Eck called Darshan, because there's a point because it talks about this very point. Like so sometimes we can take it as, it's a symbol of Brahman, right? Or it's Brahman, right? That's the Mysteria thing, right? But not in this limited way, right? It gets more mysterious, and we go into tantra and worship and like that. The same idea applies to the worship of pratimas, as also that of pratimas as that of praktika, the symbols as well as images, these worshipful images like this, like Kali. That is to say, if the image stands for a god or a saint, the worship does not result in bhakti and does not lead to liberation. It's a very big statement. But if it stands for the one God, the worship therefore will bring both bhakti and mukti. So it's interesting. So I go, our Guru Maharaj, Swami Bhajanananda, when he expired, he was buried in his ashram, in lotus posture. An image was consecrated above his body, and daily puja is done. He becomes a source. So we go there to pay honor to Swami, to him. We believe also that his soul is connected, although we also believe that he's one with Brahman, and he is Brahman, he's an eternal liberated being, right? Still there's something, right? We still we go there because there's a flavor of him. There's a connection. We believe he's there in something. That's the Samadhi Pitam is something special, right? We go to Kali temple to worship Kali. We go to a Vishnu temple to worship Vishnu. We go to Ganesh temple to worship Ganesha. We go to a holy place because the saint was there. But we also know that while this is a Kali temple, we're worshiping Kali specifically at a Kali temple. It's different than a Durga temple. It's different than a Vishnu temple, right? But we also simultaneously know that it's not different. The one that's worshipped in the Vishnu temple, in a different flavor, is worshipped here, right? The one that worshipped here, in a very different flavor, is worshipped at the samadhi of my guru, right? And the samadhi of your guru, right? It's a interesting thing. But so I'm saying, if you take it I need to do Ganesh. My astrologer said I need to do worship Ganesha with green food on Wednesdays to clear a mercury defect, right? People do that. People bring, on Wednesday people bring they bring cabbage and cucumbers. All that. I know. Okay, I immediately put them Ganesha. I said, Ganesha, please, because that. And of course here Ganesha is also the infinite, but there is a special thing. But if they're just doing it for that, then hopefully, according to what their sincerity and their puja and their offerings and their sadhana, hopefully that astrological defect or would be overcome, right? Because that becomes in the realm of karma. You do a ritual and you get the result of that ritual, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Hinduism doesn't do anything wrong with that, right? Other religions say there's a lot wrong with that, but we're not like that, right? But we any worship of any deity in any form is objectionable, right? But it's not. But it's the realm of karma, right? It leads to heaven. It leads to better life on earth. It leads to correction of an astrological mistake, like that. But if it stands for the one God, if you know you're really worshiping the one supreme being, then it leads to both bhakti. That worship leads to bhakti, and that bhakti leads to mukti. Right? Of the principal religions of the world, we see Vedanta. Here, Vedanta, the several schools of Hinduism combined, Buddhism, and certain forms of Christianity, freely using images. Right? Only two religions, Mohammedanism and Protestantism, refuse such help. Now, Swamiji is going to get a little bit his classic critique, right? It says that in Hinduism or in Vedanta, there's generally no struggle with the worship of images or saints or tombs like this, right? If according to how they're seen, it may be in the realm of karmakanda, or it could be in the realm of bhakti and mukti, right? But we need that connection because we want to worship the infinite. But two, Mohammedanism, Islam, and Protestant Christianity refuse such help. Yet the Mohammedans use the graves of their saints and martyrs almost in place of the images, and the Protestants, in rejecting all concrete help to religion, are drifting away every year farther and farther from spirituality, till at present there is scarcely any difference between the advanced Protestants and the followers of Auguste Comte, or the agnostics who preach ethics alone. So this is a strong critique, right? Because actually Swamiji, you see throughout of his lectures, this was his experience, right? Because I won't have time for this exact point. I was reading a few days ago from the perennialist, the other one, Schuon, right? Fritz Schuon. I can't pronounce French names. I forget it. I can't pronounce Sanskrit names either, but I'm even worse at But anyways, he made a point. He says actually all religion has two. His religion has only 2 points, right? And actually, Sri Ramakrishna says the exact same thing, right? That's why he says she teaches you to make distinction between the temporary and the eternal, or the real and the unreal, or we'd say use a more religious language, between God and mammon, God and the world, right? Or that would be unchanging and the changing, the eternal and the temporal, like this, right? And it gives techniques. Methodologies to various levels of success to help one focus on the real and not the temporal. So Sri Ramakrishna said that at the beginning stage, one thinks God alone is real, the world is unreal. Right? That doesn't have to lead to a world rejecting philosophy, therefore the world's bad. No, it's like, but we're looking for the eternal. We have the temporal, we have the changing and the unchanging. We were looking for the unchanging. That is the nature of religion. That's the core of all religions. That if there's a core, it's looking for the eternal reality, the unchanging, infinite ground of being, right? And so and then the religious technique and mythologies and stories and pujas and rituals and pilgrimages and philosophy is designed to help us focus our attention and find and eventually attain the eternal, unchanging, the real, amongst the changing illusion. So the danger. So somehow or another, we need to keep. We're looking for the eternal, but if you have no way to conceptualize it, right? Swamiji, last week we read, or 2 weeks ago we read, there's 2 types of people don't worship the avatar. Right? He's talking about the avatar worship, right? He says the fool and the Paramahansa. Right? An ignorant person doesn't know anything about God, so he doesn't worship. And the Paramahansa is beyond, he's on the other side. Right? So a similar thing, the two types of people don't take use of symbols for the absolute. Right? A fool or an ignorant person, not mean fool as in an insulting way, right? Or a worldly, materialistic, regular, non-spiritual, if you can use these terms. Sorry, these are not the right term. You know what I'm talking about. So without any knowledge and no interest in the divine, doesn't worship divine. And those who are already the Paramahansa, the Avadhuts, the enlightened beings, the saints, they also don't need, because they had the direct experience. Until you have direct experience, how to focus on the one we're trying to have direct experience of, right? If you break any way to connect with it, right? If you give up the symbols, the powerful and successful and meaningful, properly understood or even improperly understood symbols for that, or ways of of contacting that, meditating, thinking about it, worshiping it, loving it, developing a relationship, meditating upon it. Without that, then it disappears, right? You have no absolute, right? So the idea is, no, we shouldn't have named, we shouldn't have images, right? Because it goes against the idea of the absolute. The motivation is philosophically correct, right? But the result is you lose connection with the absolute, right? And so then your sadhana, the practices, are designed to help you focus on the absolute and attain the absolute, right? Now become, where do they go? What are the practices and beliefs of religion is, right? So Swamiji makes a very strong thing. They become just moralists, right? And Swamiji himself was a moralist, right? He talked about the importance of character building, so he's not against that. He also said that they become just doing good to society, right? Swamiji himself, because of him, thousands of hospitals and schools and food. It's like he was a big, because his worship of society is taking society itself as an image of God, right? But if you don't have the infinite God, if you no way to connect with the infinite God, then where do you put your energy? It becomes controlling people's morals in this realm and trying to do good and trying to do some philanthropic good. These are good things, but we've lost connection with the absolute, and we've lost connection with a viable practice and system to connect and to know the absolute. It's a very interesting definition. It's a very clear, foundational definition of religion, and it fits any version of religion. Again, in Christianity and Mohammedanism, whatever exists of image worship is made to fall under the category into which the pratika or the pratima, the symbol or the image, is worshipped in itself, but not as the help of the vision of God. Therefore, it is at best only of the nature of the ritualistic karma and cannot produce either bhakti or mukti. In this form of image worship, the allegiance of the soul is given to other things than Ishvara, and therefore such use of images or graves or temples or tombs is real idolatry. And of course, this is playing with this idea that the grave sin is idol worship, right? And so it's not image worship. And so this is a unique definition. This is a slightly specialized definition of is taking anything other than God as object of your worship. And so when people come here to worship Ma, right, or to go to a Shiva temple and they go outside and pour water on the Shiva lingam, they're not worshiping something other than God. They're worshiping only God, right? If you're doing here instead of worshiping God, right, then that's idolatry, right? Using a Christian term for something, It is in itself neither sinful nor wicked, right? That's another part, because the problem is that view. Some people hold it's really bad, right? It's one of the grave sins, right? The carnal sin almost, It's in the big list. It's listed in the top 10 list. Really bad things. It's right there, right? So he says it's neither. What is it? It's neither sinful nor wicked, right? It's not. It says it is a rite, it is a ritual, right? A karma, right? And the worshipper must and will get the fruit thereof, right? According to, it's in the realm of cause and effect, of karma kanda, and they'll get the result of that. And so, still have a few minutes. I wanted to, thinking about this morning over coffee, we tried to read it, and we kind of mulling over it, trying to think what we're going to, not quite knowing what we're going to say, but two verses or scenes from the Bhagavatam came to my mind. So I'll try to quickly share those things. One is a verse from third Skanda Bhagavatam, chapter 2, verse 8. Durabhago bhata lokeyam yadhavo niratam api ye sambasantu na vidhur harim mina ivo dupam. So this is a scene after Krishna had died, quote unquote. Of course, Krishna doesn't die, but Krishna has left the world, and the Pandavas are also basically, they've all died. I think at this point even the Pandavas, maybe Yudhishthira has also died, right? He was allowed, like this. And Uddhava, Krishna's cousin, right, and Vidura returning from a long pilgrimage in Himalaya. Krishna he left before Krishna, I think maybe even before Mahabharata war, he left, right? And so he came back after his pilgrimage, and looking, where is Krishna? Where is Arjun? Where is Yudhishthira? Right? They have all left. So he found Uddhava, right? And Uddhava, like it describes in the previous scene, he was just showing all the symptoms, of ecstatic symptoms, called Ashta Sattvika Bhavas. His hair stand on end, his body elongated, tears flowing from his eyes like this. So he was obviously in a very high state of bliss, right? Whatever he had practiced since that time under Krishna's instruction, he had attained that high thing. So he asked him, my dear Uddhava, what happened to Krishna? Where is Krishna? And where is the Pandavas? Right? Where did everybody go? What happened? Tell me the story, right? And so in 2 verses he answers, and the first I didn't put, but he says actually, he's very beautiful. He uses the symbol of the sun, the symbol of the moon. He says, the sun has set, meaning Krishna has gone, right? And the rest, but the sun setting is a great symbol of time, of 9 days. And so the serpent of time has eaten everybody up, and everybody's gone, right? So the sun, Krishna had leaving, now time has come, and everybody has been destroyed. So that was the first thing. And then the second verse is the verse here. It says, this is a misfortune of the world. This is the quote. Yeah. Oh my goodness, big family. Hey there. We're just a few minutes and then we'll finish. This is the misfortune of the world. It is all the more so for the Yadus. So Krishna left. This is very unlucky. But even more sad than Krishna leaving is that the Yadus, when Krishna left, they're also gone here, right? It's also very sad, right? A fish does not recognize the glory of the moon as long as they see the reflection of it in water, taking it to only be amongst themselves. So did the Yadus fail to realize that Sri Hari was till then staying with them. So actually, just like the word is na vidhu harim mina ivodupam. Na vipu, they couldn't understand what? That Hari, that it was Hari. Hari is not a name for Krishna. Hari is the supreme Ishvara, Brahman, right? Vishnu, right? Narayana. The Supreme Lord himself was with them, but they couldn't see it. They didn't recognize him. Right? Why? Because he said, this is Mina Ivodupam, just like a fish with the moon. So this is very beautiful. The image it's given in commentaries, it's explained more. The fish are in a pond, and within it the full moon is reflecting, and the fish are playing. Fish are dancing and playing with the moon, thinking, see, the moon is just like a fish like us in the water, right? And it's like this until the moon sets and the moon's gone. Then they realize, who was it that we were dancing with and playing with? Our fool, we didn't recognize. It was only the reflection of it, right? The reflection of the moon is also the moon. You say the moon is in the water. Look at the moon in the water, right? But it's not the full moon. The full moon is infinite. I mean, not really, but you know, the full moon. Yeah, it's like sun and sunlight. You say, "Oh, the sun has entered the room. Has the sun risen? Oh, the sun. Open the window. Let the sun in." If the sun came in, we'd all die within seconds. We'd all melt and turn to ash instantly, right? But also, the sun has entered, right? So this idea that living with these divine symbols, right, and taking them not to be the infinite. Their mistake. They lived with Krishna, but they didn't realize he was Hari. Just like the fish living with the moon, not realizing it was the real moon, right? Not understanding its greatness, right? So there's another story. This is the one that really kind of emotionally got to me today. From the 10th skand. This is one we talked about a year ago in the Bhagavatam. This is after the Damodar Leela where Krishna was tied, right? Then after that, it's simply the chapter title is just Krishna's childhood pastimes, right? And it describes actually Krishna with the gopis and with Mother Yashoda, and them, making him dance, and then having him come in and giving him milk and sweets, and Mother Yashoda letting him drink from her breast, and all the gopis fighting to give him sweets and fruit and presents and toys, and like that, just out of the incredibly beautiful, just sweet, loving relationship, right, with God, right? And then in 2 verses in the Bhagavatam, as far as I know, I can only remember 2 verses that are given. The whole scene is given in 2 verses. I didn't transliterate it, but I'll give the translation. So at one point, after playing for so many days with the gopis and Yashoda and getting sweets from them, they leave and he's alone in his room, right? And he hears from outside a tribal woman, forest woman, right, saying, "Come get fruit, come sell fruit." The famous fruit seller scene. A lot of paintings have been done from it, right? So he says, when the fruit seller cried in the street, come buy fruit, come buy fruit. The boy Krishna, the bestower of the fruits of action, rushed out with hands full of paddy, rice grains, as if anxious to purchase fruit from her. So she said, "Come buy fruit." But who is she calling to? Krishna. Who came? Krishna. And his name here is called Sarva Pala Prada, the giver of all fruit. Right? The fruits of all of our actions is given by Krishna, right? But the fruit means there's action and result. The fruit of karma is given by Krishna. So she's telling, come buy fruit. So she's approaching Krishna not as God, but as a limited being, right? We can also approach even Kali as such a being, right? Here, Ma, give me blessings, I'll give you a coconut, right? It can be that type of transactional thing. It's like you do this, it's like, you want fruit? Give me some pay and you get the fruit, right? Not realizing the one that she's called is God, the one who gives all fruit, right? So the full knowledge is not there, right? The fruit setter filled those little hands with fruit, those little hands from which all the grains had already fallen out. But in return, she found her fruit basket filled with precious gems. These are the 2 verses, right? Commentaries and other writings, the saints and mystics, and have filled in the gap, right? I'm not sure if the Bhagavatam tells the story further, but in my mind, I'm only remembering these 2 verses, right? But it says, so when she came, and and by the time he came, he put his little tiny hands, he carried some rice or some grains. They all spilled. 1 or 2 grains were left, and she put them in her basket, right? Here's the money, right? But he's thinking, and she says, "This all you have, right? This is not the right price for the fruit, right? Because she's transactional. She's making her living, right? Forest woman making her living." And he says, "But the gopis and my mom give me food for free, right? So I'm not accustomed. I don't know how much I'm supposed to pay." I saw this scene yesterday at my aunt's. I was helping my aunt yesterday, and she needed tortillas. And there's one of these. And one of the benefits of a Mexican neighborhood, you can get anything across the street. There's always a van. Every neighborhood has a van parked with food, And so there's like a whole supermarket in a big step van outside, always outside, right? The police make it move, and she moves across the street like that. Go across the day. I wanted to get a pack of tortillas for my aunt. She needed tortillas, right? And inside there was a little kid, bigger than Krishna, maybe 5, 6 years old, right? And the mom, and he's in there wandering around the truck, right, with some money in his hand, right? And the mom came like, what is he asking? What is he asking? And then the truck driver, the salesperson says, he's wandering around wondering what he can get for $4. right? Because you can say he wants this, but these things cost more than $4. So it's a little similar thing. He only has a few grains and he wants all the fruit, right? And so he says, but my parents give me whatever I want. The gopis give me everything I want, right? Because they don't have a transactional relationship. They think he's God. He's their God, right? But then seeing him and seeing something awakens in the story in her heart, right? It says that a burst of motherly instinct, maternal bhava manifest, right? And she's thinking, oh, your mother gives you things because you sit on her lap and you call her ma, right? And therefore she's given you everything, right? If you sit on my lap and you call me mother, I'll give you all the fruit, right? This is the thing, right? So this is not given in the Bhagavatam. This is the filled in story, right? In the minds of the devotees. They meditate upon this lila. So just like the fish not recognizing the moon, right? But what if they recognize the moon, right? What a different experience, right? Because the moon is the reflected moon is a very good symbol of the real moon. Just like the ocean, the wave is a very good symbol of the ocean, right? You want to know what the ocean's like? Just stand near and a wave will hit you, and you'll get a direct experience, right? So similarly, people worship divine images, the pratimas and praktikas and pratimas, the symbols and images of the gods, right? They're also God, right? Directly, something more God than most God. Everything's God, but not in that way, right? And so, actually, being near baby Krishna, maternal, her devotion, and a mother's love for a child is not reciprocal. It's not transactional. That's what I mean, not transactional. It's like, I'll give you milk if you give, not like that, right? So something happened. And so he said, okay, I agree to this, right? And he sat in her lap, says, Ma, give me some fruit. And she immediately put all the fruit and gave to Krishna, right? And he went off carrying as much fruit as he can. And she went off with her empty basket with a few grains of rice, right, a paddy, into the forest. But you imagine, she's now offered her everything to God, right? That's the perfection of religion right there. There's no greater goal. The absolute truth himself, right? The most intimate relationship between child and mother. Can't get a better bhava than that, right? And she had given everything, and he had accepted it, right? But she was thinking, it's lost in the ecstasy of that moment, in that experience, an eternal experience, right? And her basket was very heavy. She looked in her basket, and there she saw it full of the gems and jewels and money like that, right? And she said, where did this come from? He says, I'm a forest person. I don't need, what good does gems do in the forest? Right? And she threw them. Well, the story goes, she gave her them and she walked out. By doing this, one way to interpret the story is last time we told the story, we told it very differently to illustrate a different point, right? But all these stories came in my mind to illustrate this point, that she approached Krishna as a limited being, and therefore had a limited interaction with him. You want fruit? Give me money, right? But as soon as she changed, and because by contact with but that limit, she took him as limited, but he's unlimited. Then when that emotion came up, when she began to see him, maybe not intellectually, philosophically like we were discussing, but experientially as her divine child, right? And all that maternal, divine, pure devotion came. She gave her everything with no expectation. That's not transaction, exact opposite, right? And then she got everything, and then everything she got, she also doesn't need. Even that she gives up, right? Then you don't need that. So that is another way of saying to find the real and to let go of the unreal, right? There's one last thing I want to say in kind of pulling these two stories together about the fish and the moon. Swami Turiyananda, Thakur's Ramakrishna's disciple, he lived for some time in Benares. He lived in the garden at the Benares Ashram doing his tapasya. But in the evening he would come and there'd be a reading of Bhagavatam. One of them sadhus would read. and sometime he would comment, right? He would usually sit there listening in the evening, kind of evening satsang, and sometime he makes some comments. And they got to this verse, that same verse about the fish not recognizing the moon, or like the Yadavas, the Pandavas and the Yadavas not recognizing Krishna, right? And so he says, so this is his quote, this is Swami Turiyananda. Just as fish play with the reflected moon, we too were once upon living with Swamiji. So his moon, the reflected moon, was Swami Vivekananda himself, right? Their godbrother, right? We ate with him, slept with him in the same room. We thought Swami Vivekananda was just one of us. But he is now no more, just like the sun going down or the moon disappearing. Now we understand what and who Swamiji was, the veritable Shiva himself. So this is true of even Swami Vivekananda. Imagine what it would have been like with Sri Ramakrishna, right? But interesting, that same thing is like he also took him for granted. Now a saint or an avatar or a prophet like this, we can take for granted and miss. Right. We can also come to a holy place and take these things for granted. We can take the lingams for granted, the images for granted. We can take the mantras we sing, and the kirtans we sing for granted, right? This is a very scary thing. There's a poem by Rabindranath Tagore called the word for miser. Kripan, I think. I think it's a where it talks about a beggar he was a beggar on the road, and he heard, oh, the king is coming on the road. Oh, there's a very good chance the king will give something good, and he runs with his begging bowl. Right, and the king stops. And the king's party comes. And the king stops and looks and says, "Hey, what will you give me?" Right, and not expected to ask. Nobody asked a beggar, "What will you give me?" Right, and so so he takes one from his cloth. He takes one grain of rice, and gives it to the king. And the king throws a gold coin in his bowl, and goes and continues. Right, and then he thinks, "Oh my God, just see, I gave a little thing, and this is what I got. If I'd given him everything, he would have given me everything." So it's interesting. We take, not knowing, we're dealing with these divine beings, divine tradition. If we give a little bit, we get something for sure. But if we give everything, we get everything. Jai Sri Ramakrishna, thank you for your kind attention. Next week we'll do the Ishta Devata, the chosen ideal. A very nice chapter. Hari Om Tat Sat. We have a few copies of the Bhakti Yoga book. I think 3 copies. You can put that over there, Samaji. If you wanna just... Exactly 6:30.